again, to drive this point home, I just went on LinkedIn real quick. It's a little summary. I went on LinkedIn, typed in junior developer. We ended up right here. It's top result, brick source. I've actually been called by these people. So here, we already know what exactly they're looking for, right? Now, a lot of this is kind of scary. User stories. This is stupid. User stories are when I tell you if I'm a user, I log into your front page and it shows your front page. That's a user story. So when they say like your skills are user stories, this doesn't really mean anything to me. And I know that from my experience, but knowing user stories and understanding agile, which is essentially like project management and knowing how to segment out specific things to different people and holding them responsible for those responsibilities, it's really way more simple than it sounds. It sounds like super complicated, like oh, but really agile environment is like you show up at the beginning of the day, you have a stand up, you say like what you were working on or some problem that you had that like you were able to solve. Your project manager or your supervisor will say, hey, we have the sprint, I need you to work on this project for a week. That's agile, really, like in a nutshell. So these user stories is like, that's like if I go to your website, I'm able to log in, and I'm authorized as a user. That's a user story. Like there might even be some user stories inside of the curriculum itself. Oh, this is the wrong one, huh? Yeah, Tech Scholars. I do know there are user stories in our Tech Scholars, but maybe there's even one that you guys have access to. Let's go all the way to Dom.
Yeah, I've been Scrum trained and I've been on a team before.
Scrum, yeah.
I've been a DA and a tester. And user stories are extremely important to me.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want.
Yeah.
You know, so like some of them are kind of mundane, but other are like super technical. If you don't get that right, the value of what you're doing, a website or whatever, just goes down the tubes, you know. So if you're not crystal clear, and developers don't understand, they're gonna do their own thing. Developers don't like to tell what to do, right? They like to be creative.
Yeah.
They want license to be creative. Great. Be creative. Unless you're descriptive in your user stories about what you want, what you get is what you get. And if it doesn't meet the criteria, it'll be like, well, you said this, no, you said that, and now
You're
get
in.
pushed. You get pushed to the next sprint, you know, and then the team looks bad.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually relevant to what we're talking about. So I don't think that the microphone probably picked up all of that, but what John was talking about is that user stories actually are pretty useful. The importance behind user stories is making sure that they are as descriptive and detailed as possible, making sure you're accounting for every single edge case and conveying to the developer that you are accounting for each of these very specific functionalities. So I'm glad John brought that up. User stories aren't simple. Conceptually they're simple, right? You just write a line and it's like follow these rules, right? But that's actually a good point where it's like the specificity of user stories is very important. We've only dealt with reading user stories, so maybe this one would be good. So this could be conveyed as somewhat of like user stories abstractly, right? This could be a user story of when I log into the front page, I start with a blank canvas of pixels, right? And so the more specific you are with creating this user story, this requirement of this project, the better the functionality is going to be because the developer knows exactly what paradigm parameters are working with and what they have access to. So for this purpose, like it's very basic, but even this could be considered a user story where it's describing a functionality as if you were a client in hitting this page, as if you never had heard of this page before. As a user, when I log in, I want to start with a blank canvas of pixels. Now you could extrapolate this and be like, this blank canvas of pixels should be, you know, X by Y. It should have 24 colors at least, you know, something along those lines. But at the end of the day, this is a very rudimentary user story conceptually, and understanding that helps kind of like demystify when you see this word over here like user stories, like what does that mean? So you can take that as far as you want. You can make user stories that are as detailed as possible. You can watch YouTube videos on creating very effective user stories, but just know what user stories are conceptually and decide yourself how much time you want to dedicate towards that. Again, Java. It's going to be really hard to get away from Java. Spring is Java. If you had Java experience, you would know that. I'm here to tell you it's part of Java. Test-driven development. This is a paradigm where you are actually creating functions that are trying to break the functions you wrote. So if I have a function that says a plus b equals c, I would have a test that says any number I put into this function should always equate to the proper valuation of c. So if I input some sort of, 1 plus 2 equals 4, the test would fail. And so that's a function you would write yourself, and that's called test-driven development because you're constantly writing functions that are checking the other functions that you've already wrote. This is more relevant, again, in Java, but it's also good to know about, and if you're curious about TDD, as it's commonly referred to as in the industry, I'm more than positive there's a ton of, as a matter of fact, I'm just going to type in TDD JavaScript. Test-driven development and refactoring in JavaScript, JavaScript introduction tutorial, unit tests, integration tests, and end-to-end tests. So don't want to get too into this. TDD actually breaks down into like 4 parts. They're missing one that I can't recall off the top of my memory, but there's unit testing, which would be one function testing another function. Integration is if I run all of these functions together from point A, the start, to point B, do I get what I am expecting to get from all of these functions being called? That's an integration test. So it's units, specific, individualized tests, integration, multiple functions, and then finally end-to-end where it's multiple functions, calling multiple functions, eventually arriving at that end result, and then you need to check between A to B, all of those functions being called and resulted, and seeing if that's exactly what you were looking for. So this is like stupid in depth right here. From going from like unit, the individual test, to integration, to kind of like that localized test, to end-to-end where it's like the full encompassing project. And it's on YouTube. Again, like a lot of this stuff is free. The problem is knowing where to look. So that's why I think it's so important to know that you can just kind of come to these job postings and just Google like what is agile environment, what is an agile environment. We can go ahead and we can look and we can research these things, right? If we're able to come over here and showcase that we have JavaScript relevant skills by maybe hosting our JavaScript project online, in addition to having a Java project online on your GitHub, and you send your resume to this company with all of these criteria met, even though you don't have any professional experience, they're definitely going to consider you as a candidate. Another really, really big, another big tool you could use is this Slack channel. And I've brought it up before, I think at the very beginning. I'll make sure to put this in the Slack channel to get the invite here. But essentially you go to this AZ Devs, what is it? Yeah. You just go to this website, AZ Devs. Now, they don't want a ton of just anonymous users coming in and trolling and spamming, so you need to request an invite. You are going to be invited. Don't be afraid, like, am I exclusive enough? Like, they just want to essentially make sure that you have to go through this process in order to get the invite to their channel, so that they're not just inviting everybody and then you get like, hashtag 4324 said this guy's an idiot. And you're like, okay, well, how did you even get here? Why are you talking in the general channel? So again, azdevs.org, request an invite. To prevent spam, we request that you sign in with GitHub, right? So why am I bringing this up? Because this Slack channel, I don't know how Mac OS works. I never work on Mac OS. I like Linux a lot. We have jobs, right? We have this jobs tab. We all want jobs. In case anybody looking, this guy asked me to share. We have a great opportunity with a client of ours in Scottsdale, like where we live, Arizona, right? They want some junior DevOps engineers to the team on a direct hire basis. The ideal candidate will have DevOps experience. Again, that's agile. DevOps is like understanding the way that you would segment and break down the workflow into individual components that you can hold responsible by people designated to those roles. Experience with APIs. I showed you guys APIs. We hit an API and got a ton of JSON, just JavaScript objects, right? But not to just like, completely run through this. You can see like people, I'm looking for a front-end engineer. Cerebrum is hiring a junior to mid-range developer, MySQL, SQL skills. So this is a Slack channel that you can get an invite to, like I said, just by simply coming in here, authorize, whatever. I'm already invited. I'm not really sure if it's going to like how far. So yeah, I'm Greg. Send it to this email. What company do you work for? What technologies do you know? You guys know ES5. Don't feel like you don't know ES5. It's essentially JavaScript. If we wanted to look up what that means, ES5. Earth Station 5. That's not what I'm looking for, Wikipedia. We'll go to W3 Schools. What is ES5? It's a shortcut for ECMA Script 5. I'm not going to get into a bunch of technical jargon about this. All you need to know is this functionality was implemented into JavaScript in 2009. So what functionality was implemented in 2009? We have all of these. We have a string method. We have array methods. We have JSON methods. Date.now. As a matter of fact, that should work in the console. And this is ES5, right? So console.log date. So it's already there, right? Date.now. Let's call that. And this is the Unicode, not Unicode. What is this? This is the Unix time. So this is the universal time clock. This is how much time has passed since a certain date in 1970s. I'll show you guys while I'm recording. Unix time. It's also known as epoch time, POSIX time. It's a system for describing a point in time. It's the number of seconds that have elapsed since 000 Thursday, the 1st of January, 1970. So why did I get this enormous string over here? Because this is the amount of seconds that have passed since 1970. So this is a additional feature that was implemented with ES5. That you can use just anywhere as long as you're using JavaScript. But right now, we probably don't need to be dealing with Unix time. So for all intents and purposes, we don't got to worry about that. But as far as like ES5, like can I come to here and say I know ES5? Most certainly. I would say ES5, ES 2015, and ES 2016. What company do you work? You could do like freelance / looking, your email name, comments, blah, 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 blah. I was able to get in just fine. Obviously, they don't have JavaScript over here, so if you just select the ES elements, I got my invite and my email in like literally an hour. So that's why I'm showing this to you guys, because I want you guys to have this resource for when I'm no longer here. You guys are out of here. If you wanted to look for announcements, typically have like meetups. Meetups are amazing. I can't stress enough how important meetups are and how little people actually utilize meetups, because it's one thing to just spam resumes online. I think we all understand that, right? We've been on LinkedIn, we've been on Monster, we've been on whatever job website, and we've sent hundreds of resumes out, and we've heard nothing, right? We've all had that experience. Meetups are significantly different because you get to go and meet with these people face to face, and you get to talk to them, and you get to figure out what interests them, what they're looking for, those sorts of things. I think that there is only positives to come out of meetups. Even if it's awkward, even if you feel like you don't belong, you get to learn at least something about the way the community interacts with each other, the way that we all meet up and talk about technology. I've gone to a couple meetups and I was sitting there and I was watching what they were doing and I was like, I am completely lost. I have no idea what the heck you're doing right now, right? But just going there and talking with developers and kind of picking their brains and figuring out like how did you get to where you're at? And oh, I did this, I did that. Like learning those things you're not going to get from applying online, right? So I love this Slack channel if you're kind of trying to if you're trying to make it because they're constantly posting meetups, a free code camp, third free code camp Chandler study group sponsored by IntraEdge. I know for a fact I actually almost started working for IntraEdge. They they specifically help people who have like a good foundation of JavaScript learn Java and incorporate that with JavaScript. So I think the program that they were initially doing is no longer going on, but it's good to know that there's events like free code camps where you could learn even more if you were trying to make it as a developer, right?
In October, in that Dover Community College, they're having another Desert Code Camp. I don't know if you've been to any of those.
I haven't.
It's kind of just it's like that, but like larger. So basically, all the different classrooms that are over there. It's basically filled with different volunteers of all different types of languages. So
What is this?
if you go to desertcodecamp.com, it has like very basic website describing it, but
Desertcodecamp.com.
then the top one says Desert Code Camp 2019. I think at this point they're still trying to like get different presenters. I went last year, and it's kind of as you mentioned, where some of the stuff I was like, I don't know what they're talking about, but it's filled with people from all different companies, all different levels of knowledge. So it's good.
Yeah, like again, if you really want to make it as a developer, those are super awesome and important because if you just go there with like, I am only going to ask people, how did you get to where you're at and can you teach me what you did to get there? You're going to maybe have like 5 people say no, but you'll eventually have somebody who's just like in a good mood and they're like, yeah, I'm willing to tell you how I got to where I'm at. This is awesome. I love .NET. I love seeing .NET, I should say. I haven't personally worked with .NET, but I've worked a lot with C#, which is the foundational language of .NET. So I love seeing this because if you're not working with Java in the industry, you're working with .NET. So Java is Spring, .NET is C#. So pick your poison. It's C# or Java. .NET, C#, Spring Boot, Java. Cloud computing, little bit of a buzzword. Maybe you wouldn't need to really concern yourself with cloud computing right now. Functional programming, awesome. These languages aren't really necessarily languages that we have even ever brought up, but if you were interested in lower level language, what that might look like, this would be a good class to go to. Java. Hopefully I don't need to, again, explain why Java is important. JavaScript and Node. This is awesome. This is super cool. So if I wanted to go, I would need to do something like I pick one of these technologies and then I say like student or something. Do you know?
I think right now we're still trying to source the presenters.
Cool.
I know that the look of it changed last year.
Okay, cool. Because it's just that far out. Because it's what is it? October. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you can. That's a good question. August. Go.
Saturday. That's cool.
There you go. Yeah. So these are the sorts of things that kind of like nobody, and I'm holding up finger quotes for the recording. Nobody tells you, but it's really, really good to know because obviously now you could go to this conference, you could go to the JavaScript Node.js conference, and you could say like, hey, I know a little bit about JavaScript and Node, but I want to learn more. Like, how could I continue learning my experience, and if you have volunteers there that are educating, they're going to be more than willing to help you, right? They're volunteers. The difference between staff and volunteers is like staff are paid to be there, and they're probably looking to optimize the least amount of work they need to do, right? Like when you're on the job, you're not like, I love doing work. I want more work all the time, right? Like nobody's ever said that. But if you're volunteering, it's like the presumption from the get-go is like you're there to help others. Like you're not paid, you're not you're not like benefiting financially from this. You're there benefiting by kind of helping other people. So volunteers are great, but it also sets that different paradigm of where you're not necessarily communicating with people that are only there because they're paid to be there. You're there with people that are like there because they want to like help educate others on these topics. So I think it's great that it's done by volunteers. I think that's another plus. I've never heard of this, which is a shame. But I think eventually once this pivots to like you're a student and you can sign up, I definitely think that this would be a great opportunity to learn even more. In addition to the AZ Devs thing, like I said, you can just go to that website and try to sign up. So yeah, RESTful, this is API if you were to build your own API. I forget what this means, but essentially what REST means, like, pardon me. I remember what the concept of REST means. I don't remember what the acronym means. It essentially means you're able to build your own web API and you're able to send responses back based upon whatever route is hit. So let me see if I can't pull up one of my Q2 GitHub projects to show you guys an example of that. But let's pivot out of this while we're waiting for that to load. Backend software, we're probably not dealing with backend, and this place is in Switzerland. So I need to. I don't know why it thinks I'm in Sweden. Let's add United States. What the heck? Connections. Why am I searching? I want jobs. Jobs. Now it's searching. Yeah. So here's Brooksource again. So that's the one I clicked on. But entry-level Python. So this is probably looking for more of like the data science. So, real quick to abstract. Python. If you want to learn Python, it's not hard. Again, R is a similar application of Python. R is really, really big data and trying to make sense of it and figuring out where the correlations lie and how you can apply the data after you've worked through it and give companies pertinent information. So if you're like, I'm not really a big fan of JavaScript, I want to do something more like data science, you could come over to the full catalog of Code Academy. These guys don't pay me, I swear to God. Learn Python. Anything that doesn't say pro is free. So I love this website so much I'm willing to pay for the pro courses, but we can learn Python. So Python 3 is pro, right? But learning Python 2 is free. Learning R is free. These are both data science languages that you can apply, and you can try to look for data science jobs that maybe would be more of your speed if you think that's a cooler thing to do.
What's the benefit of the pro classes?
You just get extra access to things like that maybe took a little more time to create. So like again, like I'm guessing just by looking at it, the pro courses are maybe courses that are newer, that they actually paid more money to produce, and they only want to give people access to if they're paying for them. And again, you don't need to pay. I didn't mean to click on that. You don't need to pay to get like really good education out of this website. I just love this website so much that I decided that I did want to pay for it. But even asynchronous JavaScript, this is Ajax. Let me go up here. What is Ajax? That's a great question because I have not released that unit. There you go. Let's go take a look. If By the end of this unit, you'll be able to connect front-end and back-end code with asynchronous JavaScript requests. Ajax, asynchronous JavaScript. Let's go back to Code Academy. I need to close some of these. Asynchronous JavaScript. So this is the same thing. Ajax is asynchronous JavaScript. Asynchronous JavaScript, so, you know, if, again, feel free to stop me if I'm just going like completely off the rails again, but asynchronous JavaScript is where you need to accommodate for the fact that JavaScript is based off of a single thread operation. So JavaScript can only run one operation at a single time. And a workaround that somebody way smarter than me figured out is you could actually have like 2 JavaScript programs running at the same time. And essentially what you can do is say, oh, I don't want to work through this entire program function right now because I know it would take a certain amount of time. So what you do is you delegate that JavaScript function to that other already running JavaScript function, and it will compute it for you. And then what you would write is essentially a JavaScript promise, as it's called, and you say, I am going to send this request to you as long as you promise to return it back to me at some certain point.
I remember you saying that like the first day or two.
Yeah.
Promise how it takes it to the end.
Exactly. Well, if I was talking about that at the, at the beginning of the course, I'm sorry, because that was a little advanced, but that's all we're doing. As a matter of fact, when I was hitting that API, that was a singular Ajax function where my singular single-thread JavaScript program doesn't know how long it's going to take for the server to compile and run and give me back my data. So I didn't actually like run a function that said go to that place. I said send a promise to this place, and when this finally resolves, then I want you to call my promise again and run this different function. So that's essentially how Ajax works, is you have 2 parts of this singular function, promises. You send the promise, and then when the promise gets resolved, that you call promise.resolve, and then you get your data back. Like, really at the end of the day, that's all Ajax is. So a singular Ajax request would be sending a GET request to a server. It doesn't, you don't really see that on the front end, but at the end of the day, you're not actually waiting for that server to actually finish your algorithm. You're delegating that process to the server, and then you're waiting for when it finally resolves and then calls your promise back and says, hey, by the way, I'm done. You can actually use this function again. You're like, and then the program smartly knows like, okay, I can use that data now. That's like Ajax in 5 minutes or whatever. Obviously, there's way more going on behind the scenes, so here's a free course if you want to learn more about that, as well as the galvanized curriculum, of course. Right. Coming on through, statistics with Python. This is data science. Now, if you want to go nuts with Python, you might need to pay some chunk of change. Alternatively, there is always udemy.com, data science with Python. Hey, 50,000 people thought this was 4.5 stars, so it must be good. And it's about the price of a Subway combo meal, so if this is something that interests you, maybe think about purchasing this course and learning more about data science and Python and machine learning.
What is machine learning?
Machine learning is when you give a function, now this, to abstract again, I've never really worked intensely with Python, but abstractly, conceptually thinking, machine learning is when you say, I don't actually know what you need to run, but I want you to process this data, and I want you to try and find similarities between the data. And so you'll run this machine learning algorithm with Python, and it'll essentially say, I found like that this column ended up being, you know, more or less in between these 2 parameters or these 2 parameters. And again, I was watching this extraordinarily long video series on this concept. I love this channel, Computer File. It's amazing. If you want to learn anything and everything computers, it's awesome. So here you go, Computer File. But this guy goes in depth, like literally step by step, as to how this process works. So I'm not going to be able to describe what this guy describes in multiple, hours of video. But essentially, at the end of the day, you can think of machine learning as it's a function that doesn't really know what it's looking for, but you give it an enormous set of data, and it says, oh, I noticed that these two things are very closely correlated. I noticed that these other two things are closely correlated, so on and so forth. Um, and machine learning is a very ambiguous term. So like machine learning can also be used on like speed running video games. So you give a computer a video game and you say, I will give you the most reward points if you can complete this in the shortest amount of time. And what you'll see is mock-ups of this, or like visualizations, machine learning video game. Using Python to build an AI to build blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So a computer, you can program a machine learning algorithm to know the functionality in Mario. So like up is jump, down is crouch, left is move left, and right is move right. You can see that the computer's already figured out that by doing this weird spin move, it goes faster. So the computer is just doing it over and over again to just continuously going to continue going faster. And you can see it's just like steamrolling through this level, because this computer, the very first time it ran through this level, it sucked ass. It just ran in a straight line, and it just hit the first Koopa and it just died. And it was like, okay, well, I shouldn't do that again. Maybe I should try jumping. So it keeps jumping, and it's like, hey, I'm getting further along with jumping. Maybe I should just keep jumping. But then it jumps into an obstacle, and it's like, okay, jumping's not the answer. So maybe it's a combination of jumping and moving right. So it keeps going through this problem-solving process of like, what is the best optimal way to operate within this environment to get the best possible outcome of reward points. So you need to personally, as a developer, set what gives reward points, such as like these coins. It's kind of an easy translation, right? Like if you get this coin, it's 100 points in the game, so it's 100 reward points, something like that, right? But the computer starts to learn, okay, like if I do this move, then that move, that gets me more reward points, but then I fail. So maybe I shouldn't do that thing. If I do that, X, Y, Z, W, for like blah, 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 it gets all the way to this point where it's just like doing this crazy jump move all the way through. He's reversing it back, and he's probably going to explain how this process happens, kind of like how I just did. But you can see like the computer step by step is like, what's the next move? What's the next move? What's the next move? What's the next move? So now again, like right here, he programmed this computer to know that going right is a function, and there it just got 1,000 reward points. But then when he got hit, it decremented his reward points. So even though he got a mushroom and he got 1,000 points, the moment he got hit, it got decremented again. So the computer remembers like, oh, when I got hit by that fireball, that's a bad thing, and I shouldn't let that happen again. And literally, machine learning is just doing this like millions and millions of times. So you finally get to that point where it's just like spinning, hitting every power up. Like you're just sitting there like, I could never do that, because the computer literally created a function after doing this millions and millions of times, where it's like, this is the best possible outcome, is by doing this exact path, following this exact algorithm in order to get to the end of the level. So machine learning is a very ambiguous term, because you can use it in companies with big data. You can take like the government consensus data, and you can use it to average out like, 20-year-olds on average, how much do they make per year, or like, do 20-year-olds typically work in the private sector, or do they work in the government sector? Like, these are all things that you can use big data and machine learning on, and apply that to, in order to help businesses understand like what their target audience is. So if you have a ton of data, let's say we're talking about music, and you know for a fact that this specific user keeps clicking on techno genre songs, the machine learning algorithm going on behind the scenes, which, whether you realize it or not, is happening on Spotify, Netflix, Amazon, all of those companies, they all have machine learning algorithms to try and learn your behaviors, and they're going to suggest things that their machine learning algorithm has analyzed as being pertinent to you as a person. So Amazon and these big companies are going to use these large sets of data to analyze, like, what are 20-year-olds mostly interested in when they're on YouTube. What are they clicking on? What are with Spotify, when you're designated in this age group of 30 to 40, what are your most interesting genres? And then they cluster them together. That's the technical term, it's a cluster. And they say, okay, if you fall within this age group, there's a 50% chance you would click on this artist. So that's why you have these recommended artists showing up or recommended TV shows, because they're like, I've analyzed everything that you've clicked on, and I ran it through my machine learning algorithm, and I can say with a certain degree of certainty, these other TV shows are other TV shows other people enjoyed that have clicked on the exact same things that you've clicked on.
There was a data class that I took that was talking about that, and this girl had bought like a couple of products from Target, and all of a sudden she was getting baby coupons in the mail. And
Yeah.
I was like, my daughter is not pregnant. Like, could you stop sending these? And then literally 2 months later, she was like, I'm pregnant.
That's
Because
because
she had bought like Q-tips and lotion, like something ridiculous, and they figured out that those two combinations, most pregnant women were purchasing.
and that's
Something ridiculous.
exactly, and that's not a human. That's the thing, is that that's the machine learning algorithm. Like, no person had malintent, and they were like, I'm gonna flag this woman as pregnant because I hate her. Like, it was literally like the machine was so smart, and it recognized the pattern that she was purchasing these items, and it was saying, like, I'm noticing this pattern that I've seen before, and if my data is correct, because I've ran through billions of entries, so it's probably correct, it seems like you're pregnant because you're purchasing these specific items that I've seen other pregnant people purchase. So that's why I started recommending those items, because it's like, hey, you're in this cluster of pregnant purchases, right? So that's when it's going to start recommending those. So that's why when people, they start freaking out, like, oh, I was talking about a Ford truck and I get Ford ads. Sometimes it's just as simple as, like, you Google, like, better truck. Like, I want a better truck. And so it knows, like, oh, you're in America. Maybe you're a veteran. Veterans tend to like USA companies. Ford is a USA company. Here's a USA made truck. Like, it's not this, like, weird Illuminati, like, oh my God, they're controlling all the data. It's literally just a machine going, I've analyzed billions of lines of data that you could never possibly comprehend, and I have assumed that based on your actions thus far, this would be the next best option for you. So that's like machine learning abstracted, very high level. Obviously, there's different applications, there's different languages to apply this. So I was learning a little bit about R. R is a data science programming language that lets you do data science. Pardon me. And then Python is another one. The only thing is, with Python, you need to import this, like, NumPy library. Sometimes you need to also do, like, pandas. The cool thing about R is that, like, from the ground up, R is made for data science. So Python is like JavaScript, where it can be used for a lot of things. R is, like, literally only for data science. So that's one really cool thing about R, is, like, if you just want to do data science, you don't really want to mess around with Python, you don't want to learn an entirely new language. Let's see where I left off.
Here's a question for you, totally off the rails.
Yeah.
Speaking of machine learning, and
This is what Python looks like. Completely different syntax, right? This means define, and this is the function name. So here we have no parameters, and then instead of curly braces, it's an opening semicolon, colon. Like, already we're completely out of JavaScript, right? You can see, like, we're not doing console.log. We don't have any sort of operator. It's just print space the string. Like, so if you want, you can spend some time learning Python, the different syntax and stuff like that. Also, R is going to have different syntax, but what I'm trying to illustrate is Python is far more verbose than R. Python, my sister uses it as a as a sysadmin. She uses it And so how we have JavaScript with Node, there's this thing called Python with Elixir. So she actually uses Python as her backend as a sysadmin. She works for Cigna Healthcare, and so she codes in Python every single day. So Python isn't specifically machine learning. It's not specifically like only that application. Whereas the language R is. R is like literally data science. Period. So what was your question again?
Talking about machine learning,
Yes.
things like Google Assistant, Alexa,
It's recording everything you ever say.
listening to everything
Yeah.
you say.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's so what I can say for certain is when you say, "Hey Alexa," got away. Hey Siri. Okay. When you say those things, that's when it's like, supposed to. It's legally supposed. That's when it starts recording. That's when they can take your entry and they can start running those machine algorithms on them. There was that weird controversy that came out where there was a family having dinner, completely talking amongst themselves, never said the A word, and somehow, some way, Alexa had recorded a snippet of their conversation without saying the A word, and aired out, sent it completely to the wrong person, and it got sent to like their neighbor. And so I don't know if I can just pull that article up real quick, but that, if you want to get into that discussion, that's a whole different, paradigm, because then you're getting into the NSA. Are they always listening to what we're saying, right? Like, but as far as like machine learning with Amazon Alexa, like in the ClearNet, and like we're all just pretending the world is perfect. The way their machine learning algorithm works is everything that you say to it, it's going to record, add to that machine learning algorithm, and be like, okay, he asked me like, what is the best way to cut wood? So automatically it's like, this guy is interested in woodworking. What are some woodworking tools that would be pertinent to what he's talking about? All of a sudden, Amazon, the next time you log on to Amazon.com, you have all of these woodworking tools recommended to you, right? That's perfectly legal and fine, right? You get into that weird gray area with that article that was posted that's saying like, these people didn't explicitly give Alexa their permission to record what they said. And then you get into that weird controversial political thing that I really don't want to get into. But in a perfect world, when you say, "Hey Alexa, I want to learn woodworking," it remembers that, and then the machine learning algorithm remembers your Amazon account where you asked that, and that's why when you log on to Amazon, you start to get a bunch of woodworking recommendations because it remembers that you asked for that specifically. So that's how that works. It's not like some nefarious thing where it's like, again, like some guy behind the scenes with a hood. You always see like hacker stock photo, right? It's the same freaking thing every single time. It's all right. This guy is not running the machine learning algorithms. I don't know why you need a balaclava when you're programming, because nobody can see me through my laptop. Right? This is always like the thing that we see as the hacker, right? So nobody's sitting there with a balaclava on being like, I'm going to target John and make sure that like we're recording him all the time. It's just these like small discrepancies that happen maybe from time to time where the code errors out, but 99% of the time it's working the way it's supposed to. And when you're seeing these weird correlations, it's because you gave that company that data. And they're giving it to a function that's way smarter than us, and it's going to come out with an outcome that we could never come out with. It's going to be able to analyze billions of entries of data within seconds, right? And then it's going to be like, well, based on these billions and billions of entries that I've listed through, it seems like since he said, how do I woodwork? He's probably interested in woodworking, right? So that's kind of how that thing comes about, where if I start to Google, like, new trucks. Now, I'm not on Google. I don't, for specific reasons, but if I typed in new trucks on Google, it would use my cookie, and we discussed cookies yesterday.
So that's why it shows up in like Facebook for ads.
Because Google serves about 90+%. Let's see.
So what about when people, like, I'm sure you've heard people say, yeah, I was just talking about traveling to California. I didn't Google search it. I didn't do anything. And now all I'm seeing is flight information. Where does that play into all of that?
Tinfoil hat. Tinfoil hat.
Right? Like, I hear a lot of people that say that, but they're like, I didn't search anything. I was just talking about it, and now it's popping up everywhere.
I found it myself. I need 2 trash bags, and then poof, there they show up. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
How much advertising space does Google control? Maybe they're purposely obfuscating this. So to touch up on that real quick, there's a couple different things going on behind the scenes there that people may not realize. What you have to understand is when somebody says, like, I can't believe this happened, I was talking about this thing, and then this result happened, that's anecdotal evidence. There's not necessarily any evidence, like structural evidence, that supports that claim. So what they may not have realized is, like the pregnant women at Target, they were already Googling things that kind of led to that eventual outcome. Whereas they didn't Google like new trucks, right? But they Googled like how to fix this thing, how to fix that thing. And then the machine learning algorithm is like, this person is having problems where I know their car is failing. So maybe it's time to start recommending them new cars. And then it's like, maybe they don't even realize it because they're just not paying attention. And they're getting ads where it says like, hey, here's new cars. Hey, here's new cars. Hey, here's new cars. But then all of a sudden, they get that ad they were talking about that day, like, oh, a Chevy, I don't know any Chevy models, the Chevy Model A. And then they're like, oh my God, I was just talking about that. When in reality, it was like the whole time you were Googling all those things, the machine was already recording and learning, and it was starting to understand that you were probably heading towards that point anyway. And again, I am saying this as like, this is like the world is sparkly rainbows and fluffy clouds and everything is perfect. I don't know if they're secretly recording your conversations. I really don't. But as it would be explained to you and me by these companies, this is how the AI and machine learning algorithm works. So take it as you will. Again, it's kind of like the whole political, like, are they always listening? Are they not? In a perfect world, in a totally like legal, reasonable application, you have no reason to worry about them always listening to you, unless you feel it's necessary. That's all I'll say. So I am not using Google for a reason. Maybe you can infer how I feel about that. So yeah. You might be wondering why I'm talking about all this. The reason is because we're heading to a point now where it's like we're becoming familiar with HTML. We kind of get the concept of JavaScript, and next week is our last week. I just wanted to make sure that I recorded and showed you guys, like, if you did want to continue your learning experience and you didn't necessarily know like how or where to start, like these are all these ways where you could continue learning that don't involve like going to a 4-year university, that don't involve like having to go to Galvanize where you're dedicating like 9 to 5 hours of your life every single day of every single working week or whatever. You get what I mean, right? So this isn't HTML obviously, but I'm purposely doing this because we're not going to have this class forever, and I want you guys to know, like, okay, once this is done, what can I do to like continue on this path? And these are things that you can do to continue on that path. So you have to really think about where you see yourself in the future. I would personally love to work for a video game development studio, so that's why I learned video game development technologies. But maybe you think like big data is really cool. So maybe then you can learn Python, you can learn R, you can learn these different libraries that come with Python, so on and so forth. Let's see what they ask. So they want you to know Python 3. They want you to know those Python libraries. Pandas, Matplotlib, and NumPy. Let's go back and let's see. Cool. It's got a little pumped up. So here's Python 3. It's a pro. Node, love Node. Statistics with Python, that one's free. NumPy, Pandas, right? Data visualization in Python. Learn recursion in Python. So right here, I already found 2 of those buzzwords that they said. Pandas and NumPy. Just right here in Code Academy. NumPy, Pandas, right? So like, I think the first step if you want to continue learning is look at these job postings and see what they're looking for and really think about like what you would want to be doing in the future. If you really want to be working with big data, if you want to take like this CSV that has more information than you could ever like sit down and read from start to finish in your lifetime, if you think that's like really cool, I think it's cool. That's why I was learning about it. If you think that's cool and that's what you want to work in, then learn Python, learn PAMDAS, learn VBA and Excel, learn investment principles, right? Maybe you just want to be a junior software developer. What does that take? I'm shocked. I'm seeing Java again, right? Java with Spring. JavaScript. These are JavaScript frameworks. So they say or Node. I think that by saying or Node, they just want you to have experience with having a JavaScript backend and a JavaScript front end. That is predominantly what Node is used for, is turning JavaScript into a lower level language like Java to act as a server, essentially. That's when they say they're looking for Node, that's what they mean, is they want you to have the experience of using Node to spin up your own live server and host your own files. C# with .NET, again, that's pretty similar to Java, so maybe this one is a little technical, is a little over the top, but PHP came before JavaScript. That's what a lot of people coded in as their backend before JavaScript. Swift is specifically for Apple, and Ruby on Rails is another lower level language that you could host your programs on. So that's quite a bit of technology, but it is pertinent. Maybe they're not looking for you to have all of these skills, but this kind of gives you a starting point, right? If you're on Apple devices, Swift is great. If you're not on Apple devices, I say just forget it, because it's literally meant for iOS devices. Maybe I can get Swift IDE and show you why. It gives you literally an iPhone to program on. Swift iPhone. Yeah, oh, Taylor Swift. Anyway, the way that Swift works is that specifically since it's for Apple and iOS, it literally gives you like a fake iPhone, and you go, I want my nav bar, and you drag your nav bar. Like you take your nav bar and you click it, and then you drag it over to the iPhone screen, and you're like, I want my nav bar there. And then you click on a button, and then you drag that functionality, and you're like, when they click on this button, it should take them to it's like insane. So it's you're no longer just coding in text. It's like you literally get to drag and drop what these things look like and then what they should do. So it's like amazing if you want to just only be in Apple, but at the same time, like I said, it's like literally only for Apple. So that's the thing about Swift. So if you're on an Apple device, maybe you love Apple, you want to learn more about Apple, Swift is great. Otherwise, if you're on a Windows device, you might as well forget Swift because it is not meant for you to be programming on Windows. Reviture, these guys I know are looking for Java. Entry level, they don't really give a lot of recommendations. SQL is tables, willing to relocate. This is actually pretty good. They're looking for a bachelor's degree. That's kind of how you want to take that. If you feel like you have the same amount of knowledge and experience as somebody with a bachelor's degree, I would not let this ever deter you from applying to the position. Even more so, again, to hammer home on the meetups, if you're going to these meetups and you have a solid foundation of SQL, of Java, of JavaScript, and you start talking to these people, you're going to get connections. And these people are going to want to connect you to other people that will eventually get you to where you want to be. So I cannot stress this enough. Looking at job postings and seeing exactly what they're looking for, machine learning, C#, databases, SQL, object relationship mapping like entity framework. What is entity framework? .NET, C#. jQuery is a JavaScript library that we probably won't get into too much, but just you can understand it as like if you want to augment JavaScript when you're dealing with your HTML page, you can bring in jQuery. TDD, unit testing. This is a testing library, Selenium. So on and so forth. So once you're done with this program, don't feel completely lost. Go to a job posting, see what they're asking for, and just think about where you would see yourself in this industry and just try to focus on learning those technologies either through Code Academy, cheap courses on Udemy, so on and so forth. And again, like if you just want to hone your skills on technologies you already know, like JavaScript, you can go to Code Wars. I already solved this one some time ago, but again, if you wanted to test your JavaScript skills, you could always go to Code Wars and just do a JavaScript test and see if you can pass it. They're fun. I like doing these every now and then just to make sure I'm on the ball and stuff like that. But these are all tools that you can use to help accelerate or get you closer to where you would hopefully want to be as a developer. So that's why I went into this huge tirade about all this stuff, because we're not going to be in this class forever. We're not going to have access to, you know, me as a resource all the time. And when we're done with this course, I want you guys to have the know-how of if you did want to continue working and learning in this field, you knew where to at least start on working on these things. So that being said, we could probably start talking about more HTML and CSS. Are there any questions on everything and anything I went over? I know that was a lot of like theoretical stuff, but I do feel like it's pretty important.
I think that AV dev is just awesome. And I've done a lot of research on like what's local and I've never come across that. So
Yeah, there you go. That's yeah, no problem. I didn't know about it until my instructor told me about it when I was about to graduate. So yeah, I think that's just kind of one of those things where it's like you need somebody to kind of tell you about it.
yeah.
Yeah. So HTML is just one piece of the puzzle if we want to eventually arrive at that point. It's not so bad. Maybe we can continue working on these mock-ups, or maybe we could do the exercise. Oh, this is the mock-ups. We did 3. No, we didn't. Okay, so we can start on this one. I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to let us take like a